I don't think what was said about that meeting I had with the Russian ambassador was legitimate. I think it was hyped beyond reason.
Hyped beyond reason. Oh, man. Now we know that the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, listens to this show beyond reason, and I think he was right. Did you hear that? Hyped beyond reason, right out of the mouth, the words right out of my mouth, the mouth of the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. Welcome, everyone, to the special Friday edition of Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee. I just had to share that with you because, I mean, when does you get to have the Attorney General of the United States mention your show? Mention on Fox News with Tucker Carlson. Mention Beyond Reason Radio. Okay, he didn't say the radio part. I'm just going to add that in at the end.
All we needed was call letters.
Exactly. It was hyped beyond all. It's what he should have said is it was hyped beyond reason, like Yaffee says on his Beyond Reason Radio show. Then there we go. He wanted to say that. He just didn't get to that. So we have so much to get to in today's show. So much to get to on this whole Jeff Sessions thing. I've been doing a lot of investigations into what is going on with this whole Jeff Sessions thing. And today is really proof. Today is really proof that the Democrats overplayed their hand in this whole thing. They really did. And the way Trump responded, whether you like him or not, was brilliant politics. Brilliant politics. So we'll get into how he responded. He the pictures out of Democrats. Now, you know, I talked about on yesterday's show how they caught Claire McCaskill lying. She tweets out, I never once met with the Russian ambassador, and then they just looked at her old tweets and she met with him twice within like the past 3 years. So so much to get to. So when it comes to this whole thing with Jeff Sessions, because the Democrats are obviously trying to create a narrative that there's some kind of connection.
Hanky-panky
going on between Russia and the Trump campaign. They never have any proof. They have circumstantial things here and there, never have any real proof that there's any real stuff going on with the Trump campaign and Russia. So they added this another connection and Jeff Sessions, where they said, well, they went after him. They said he perjured himself. He lied. He said he didn't meet with them, but he did. And then I played the whole context of the audio yesterday, and it's kind of obvious to me why he misstated what he said. Because the question was about the campaign and his relationship to the campaign. He had no meetings with them in relationship to the campaign. We went over all of this yesterday. But I looked into this further. And as I looked into this further, I realized there's really nothing here in terms of this Sessions thing. The Democrats really overplayed their hand. I don't think the Democrats even believe that Sessions had any kind of nefarious contact with the Russians in terms of trying to influence the Trump campaign.
I think I've heard Schumer somewhere along the line say, the contact was all right. It was the fact that he lied about it.
Well, yeah, they're trying to make it about the lie now. Now they're trying to make it about, but it was never about the lie. This is not about the lie. You know how I know it's not about the lie? Because say Jeff Sessions resigned, this would have been over. There would have been no criminal. I guarantee you, if Jeff Sessions immediately resigned, there would have been no criminal investigation. Notice how the Flynn thing, after Flynn resigned, there's nothing else happening with him. He's gone now. That was their goal, to get him to go, to make the Trump administration look bad, and they accomplished that, and that's where it went. But when in terms of what really, really cemented for me that this is really a nothing burger, as Ted Cruz called it, is when you look at the actual meetings, you realize that there were normal meetings, for instance. And Jeff Sessions talked about it on his show, on Tucker Carlson last night. And this is what Jeff Sessions, hold on, we got to play a cut here for me, Tom Benson, in just a sec here. This is what Jeff Sessions on Tucker Carlson. Go ahead and play Sessions cut 2 for me. Tom, this is what Jeff Sessions said on Tucker Carlson about the two meetings he had with the Russian ambassador, and then a lot of this will make sense. This is what he said.
So I had a meeting in my office with two senior staffers, both retired military people, non-political, and we had a meeting with some 25 ambassadors in recent months while I was senator, and the Russian ambassador was just one of them. I spoke at the Republican convention at a conference with some 50 ambassadors. After I spoke, I walked down from the podium and mingled with a number of people, and we met at that occasion and had a chat. Otherwise, and I left shortly thereafter. So that's the only two times that I recall having met him. Perhaps I have. I'm on the Armed Services Committee, and sometimes you meet people like that, but I don't recall having met him any other time.
So Jeff Sessions admits there that, and the USA Today, Business Insider, all these other accounts are now confirming what he said there. That the main meetings, there was two meetings. The main one they focused on was at a diplomacy event that was connected to the Republican convention. At this event, Jeff Sessions he spoke to lots of diplomats at the same time, actually, and met with several different ambassadors in a very informal way. And then afterwards, he mingled and talked with them, and that was the extent of it. Now, the USA Today had a story today, and the headline makes it seem bad for Trump once again, but once you read the story, it's very interesting. It says, exclusive, two other Trump advisors also spoke with Russian envoy during GOP convention. So it makes it seem like, oh, these Trump advisors are part of it. Two more are part of this. But when you look at it, it was all just a part of this diplomacy event. And in fact, they even admit that it's not unusual. Now, this happened at the Global Partners in Diplomacy event in Cleveland. The program schedule and social media photographs shows ambassadors from dozens of countries who attended, alongside many of the original national security advisors to Trump's campaign. Gordon, who managed the advisory committee as the Trump campaign's director of national security, said that while he was there, he also spoke to the Russian ambassador. It is not unusual for a presidential campaign to interact with diplomats. He said, I consider it an informal conversation, just like my interactions with dozens of other ambassadors and senior diplomats in Cleveland. What this tells me is they were at an event with several other diplomats. And by the way, this event was scheduled by and set up by the Obama administration. It was scheduled even long before they knew Trump was going to win. So they go there, and it's just an informal event, and the Russian ambassador was just one of many. So where is the story here? I think the Democrats realize there is no story here. I think they realize they overplayed their hand, and now the Trump administration is fighting back. And this is, whether you like it or not, this is really, really brilliant politics, because it came out today. And let me see if I can get the tweet here by Trump, because Trump tweeted this out. Because what happened is the Drudge Report put out pictures this morning of Chuck Schumer with Vladimir Putin, not with the Russian ambassador, but with Vladimir Putin, laughing and smiling
and eating donuts
and doing all of this stuff. And so Trump tweets out the picture and says, we should start an immediate investigation into Senator Schumer and his ties to Russia and Putin. Now, he's being sarcastic there, but he says a total hypocrite. And he's exactly right. This happens all the time. Not only that, but the Daily Caller is reporting today that the Russian ambassador was in the White House some 23 times. So it was in the White House a bunch of times. They found out that a lot of these people on this Armed Services Committee had meetings with the Russian ambassador. So what is this really all about? This is about creating a narrative that there's something there. Now, I'm going to get to, in the next segment, There is something there, I think, but it's something that no one else is talking about. And I'm going to get to that. And we have so many other things to get to today. But the big thing that I got today is I was reading into this because they tried to make it, they said Sessions lied. So they tried to make it, well, why is Sessions lying? Why is Sessions lying? He must be having these secret meetings. Why are all these Trump officials having these meetings with the ambassador? They must be related to the campaign. But then when you dig further into it, he had 2 meetings. One in his capacity in his office with other military aides that were there that can talk about it. Had a meeting in his office with the Russian ambassador because he was on the Armed Services Committee back in September. Okay, within that time frame, he had meetings with 25 other ambassadors. Then he had another meeting at the convention, an informal meeting, while there were several diplomats there as well. And he could have met with tons of other ambassadors, and nobody thinks him meeting with other diplomats and other ambassadors suggests that there's any connection with those other countries. They don't care about that. So they're trying so hard to make a narrative here. But what I think is actually here, and I'll get to in the next segment more, but I think there is a reason why the Russian ambassador keeps trying to meet with all these people. I think there is a reason why the Russian ambassador is trying to make these connections and is trying to do something. There is something to that point of it, but it's something that no one else is really bringing up. They're bringing up this they tried to hack into the election. There was a conspiracy to hack into the election to get Trump elected and all this stuff, and the campaign was a part of it. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. But I'll tell you where there is something, and we have so much more to get to. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee. We will be right back.
You want to listen to Beyond Reason Radio live on your smartphone? Download the Beyond Reason Radio app now. Available in the Google Play or Apple App Stores. Your voice of truth in a world of fake news. Beyond Reason Radio continues right now.
Yes, I am your voice of truth, your voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We're on till 8 p.m. tonight. If you miss any of the show, you can catch the podcast of the show anywhere podcasts are available. The easiest way, download the Beyond Reason Radio app. By the way, I have a new blog page on the WFLA website. Go to 1025WFLA.com, click on the Good Morning Orlando tab, then click on Beyond Reason blog. I put out a really great piece on that I wrote. You know, if I do say so myself. No, I put out a piece that I wrote on the future of conservatism and how I am a little worried about the future of conservatism. You can read that, disagree, share with your friends. Some people have already disagreed with me. So just to outline where we are right now. Jeff Sessions was attacked by the Democrats because they say he lied about meeting with the Russians. He thought he was talking about as relation to the campaign. He met with them, one at a diplomacy event, another in terms of the Armed Services Committee, twice. The Democrats really overplayed their hand because now the Republicans are just putting out all this information about how all these Democrats met with the Russians and how Chuck Schumer's basically on camera smiling with Putin. Okay? And the reason why I bring this up is because the Democrats, to me, are dumb. If they were smart, what they would go after is not this whole scandal, not because they're trying to manufacture a scandal and a narrative here. Instead of going after so-called scandal and this so-called election hacking and all this stuff and trying to get Trump elected, what they should really go after is Trump's Russia policy. What Trump's policy is towards Russia. Because when you look at Trump's approach to Russia and Trump's policies and what he wants his administration to do in dealing with Russia, then there really is some concern there. And all I have to do is go back to just a couple weeks ago when Trump was asked about Putin. And I have that cut here. Could you play that Trump cut? This is what Trump said that could make anyone a little bit worried about Trump's dealings with Russia. This is what he said.
Do you respect Putin?
I do respect him.
Do you? Why?
Well, I respect a lot of people, but that doesn't mean I'm going to get along with him. He's a leader of his country. I say it's better to get along with Russia than not. And if Russia helps us in the fight against ISIS, which is a major fight, and Islamic terrorism all over the world,
right,
major fight, that's a good thing. Will I get along with him? I have no idea.
He's a killer, though. Putin's a killer.
A lot of killers. We got a lot of killers. Why, you think our country's so innocent?
And honestly, yeah, see, this is where I disagree with Trump a lot, because Putin is a killer. Russia has proven that they are not our friends, and they are not the friends of the West, and that that Russia is extremely dangerous. He invaded Georgia, invaded the Ukraine, has had cyber attacks on us, has killed journalists and other diplomats and spies out there in terms that are on our side. So he's not our friend. So when you hear that, you do get concerned about Trump's policy towards Russia. Now, if you listen to him in the campaign, you will see that he was pretty consistent on that. The reason why he wants to be friendly towards Russia is, one, probably economic reasons, but the other, because he believes Russia can fight ISIS for us. He said that several times. So if the Democrats were smart, which they're not, they would go after that. They would go after his take on Russia, his policies towards Russia. But they're not. Instead, they're trying to manufacture a scandal. So this goes back to why I believe the Russian ambassador kept wanting to meet with all these Trump surrogates. And there's the article in the New York Times today that the Russian ambassador has really created a network with several U.S. diplomats out there, trying to create a network and trying to make connections with several U.S. diplomats to get, buddy-buddy with them. Why is this happening? Well, Jeff Sessions actually said this in his interview with Tucker yesterday. He was asked, well, here's the exchange where Jeff Sessions says what their meeting was actually about.
I mean, they clearly went out of their way to talk not just to you, but to other members of the Senate and to General Flynn, et cetera. I mean, but they were clearly trying to sell their position on something. And what was your impression about what their objective was? Like, what was the issue that mattered most to them?
I'm not sure. The thing that really caused him to push back was a discussion of the Ukraine, as I recall. And as I described it, everything everybody else said about the Ukraine and what Russia did was wrong, and everything Russia did was right. He was sort of the old-style ambassador, in my opinion, and that was perhaps the thing that he wanted to share. But I'm not sure what was primarily on his mind.
There it is. There it is. This was the same thing he talked to Flynn about. What Russia is trying to do and is trying to influence, and the ambassador is trying to do, is they're trying to get the United States to be soft on Russia in dealing with the Ukraine. They're trying to push the United States to get rid of sanctions and to basically ignore what's going on in Ukraine. Because for some reason, Putin has a very big interest in getting Ukraine, getting that part of the Ukraine. And this keeps happening, where all of these meetings with the Russian ambassador, with all these Trump surrogates and all these other diplomats, is he's trying to push an agenda, and I'm sure this is coming from Putin, to put pressure on the United States to back off of what they're doing with Ukraine. Another instance that proves what I'm talking about here is last month, and the video was released this week, but the instance happened last month. There's video out there of Russian fighter jets buzzing the USS Porter. Now, there was video before of them buzzing another ship. This is a new video of them buzzing the USS Porter last month while it was operated in the Black Sea in an episode the U.S. had deemed unsafe and unprofessional. So the U.S. is buzzing our ships. They're putting a ship, they had that spy ship off the coast not too long ago. I think, it was just a couple weeks ago. It was off like the coast. It was in international waters, but it was off the coast there. They're buzzing our ships. And there's even talks now. Reuters had a report today that the relationship between Trump and between Russia and Putin is actually starting to cool and starting to not be good because Trump, I mean, he wants to look tough too, but he's starting to put pressure on Russia over Ukraine and over sanctions. So Putin is trying to push back by buzzing our ships and all this other stuff. He is constantly trying to put pressure on us dealing with Ukraine and dealing with sanctions. And by the way, if Trump was all buddy-buddy with Vladimir Putin and Russia, why would Russia think it was necessary to buzz our ships? Why does Russia think it was necessary to put all this outside pressure on us when they have a best buddy in the White House? They would not think it's necessary. They might think Trump is weak on Russia, just like Obama was weak on Russia. They might think Trump is not going to do anything because his past statements on Russia. But if they were like best friends, there would be no reason to put all this pressure on the United States. So when I'm looking at this, and I'm actually looking at the details, the Democrats are trying to go on this other narrative that Trump is, best buddies. The Trump campaigns was best buddies with Russia because they wanted to get Trump elected, didn't want Hillary to win, and that the Trump campaign was helping Russia in that regard. I don't believe, another reason why I don't believe that either, because I don't think Trump ever expected to win. I don't think Trump expected to win. And I'm not even sure Trump wanted to win. I think it was a complete surprise that Trump won. I really do. There was some evidence in maybe the last couple weeks behind the scenes that Trump actually had a good chance that Hillary Clinton in the campaign was hiding. But I'm looking at all this evidence, and what I see is this pressure being put on. So let's see. Let's take a call here real quick. Stefan in Orlando, what's your take on this?
Well, I think you've got half of it. Actually, I think you probably got about 90% of it. But the Democrats are dumb. They're not doing what they should be doing with Trump if they really wanted to push this thing seriously. But what it all goes back to, and you've played a couple of the cuts, but it also goes back to the campaign when Trump was just Russia, 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 Putin, Putin, Putin. He's so great. He's so awesome. Why can't, and even before the campaign, why can't Obama be more like Putin? Putin's such a strong leader, blah, blah, blah. And what the Democrats are trying to do is trying to connect his love for Putin to what he said here recently about Putin to try to, like you said, build a narrative that says there's a scandal here. But I think, as with most things with Trump, if he would just choose his words more wisely, I was going to say keep his mouth shut, but that's not happening. So if he would just choose his words more wisely, he could avoid a lot of the backlash that he's receiving because the Democrats wouldn't have anything to go on. They wouldn't have anything to go with, but.
Well, and there's instances too when and you're probably right. Trump doesn't usually choose his words very wisely, but there's a lot of evidence now that the Obama administration, right at the end of the administration, tried to get evidence on all this to create a narrative. But every time they tried, the FISA court went into the servers that Trump had. They did all this investigation. They looked into the Mike Flynn phone call, but every time they do it, there's no real evidence of any kind of conspiracy that they're trying to do. So they're pointing to this thing.
But the problem is, after a certain period of time, they won't need evidence any longer. After they've built this narrative for such a long period of time, if this goes on for another 3 months and additional people keep popping up after because that's another thing they did is they went throughout the entire campaign in the first few weeks saying nobody's ever talked to anybody in Russian, nobody's ever talked to anybody who's spoken Russian, nobody's ever talked to anybody who knows where Russia is. You know what I mean? And now as these names keep coming up and popping up of people who have, it just builds the narrative even bigger. And if it continues,
but they're exaggerating the narrative, now Trump is fighting back, and that's another thing that's going to hurt the Democrats. I think though. I just think the Democrats are going to hurt their credibility in the way they're going about this.
But I just believe to the casual political listener who's not tuned in like some people who might be listening to conservative talk radio and things like that, they're getting a piece here, a piece there, and it might be just enough to turn them.
Maybe. I'm not sure. I appreciate your call, Stefan. Good points. I'm not sure about that because it hasn't really happened yet. And one of the reasons I'm not sure about that as well is the Republicans tried this. The Republicans tried this against Obama. And over and over and over again, they tried to pin Obama to some scandal. And a lot of those scandals, I think, were valid. But I don't think, though, that ever turned voters against Obama. I think what turned voters against the Obama administration were Obama's policies in terms of health care, in terms of the economy, in terms of foreign policy and all that stuff. I think that was what really did it in terms of getting Congress to become Republican, all that stuff. I don't think it was the scandals. So to me, if the Democrats wanted to be smart, they could learn from the Republicans and go say these scandals are not going to be what turns people, but the policies of Trump and where they disagree with policies on Trump is what could turn people. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. Good conversation. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. Beyond Reason Radio continues now.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Orlando Smart Talk Radio. As you heard before, I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. If you missed any of the show so far, you can catch the podcast of the show anywhere podcasts are available. We were talking about the whole Jeff Sessions thing. The Democrats went after him. The first, it was about the whole Russian thing. Now they're trying to go after him after perjury. Now, Jeff Sessions did recuse himself in dealing with anything dealing with Russia in the investigations at the Department of Justice. He did that to kind of put things aside. And then I pointed out how these meetings with the Russian ambassador were one of them was an incredibly informal meeting that he had while a bunch of other diplomats were there. And the other one was while he also was in a round of talking with many other diplomats at the same time. I think these meetings are Russia trying to put pressure on the United States over Ukraine. I think more and more evidence is showing that. The other thing that has come out, though, is that the Obama administration was pretty busy before they went out of office. Apparently, they tried to collect tons of intelligence, even though they had no real facts on this. They even tried to go to the FISA court twice to hack into one of Trump's servers because they thought there might be a connection with him in Russia. They found nothing. You know, they had Mike Flynn's phone calls. They found nothing other than that they talked. And then now, as before Obama went out, Michael Walsh reported and the New York Times reported that the Obama expanded the power of the National Security Agency to share global intercept personal communications with the government's 16 other intelligence agencies before applying privacy protections. The new powers and reduced protections could make it easier for intelligence on private citizens to be circulated improperly or leaked. Remember, I said 2 weeks ago that I think these leaks coming out of the intelligence agency was pretty much about partisan politics. Obama holdovers and others who didn't like Trump wanted to put out information to hurt Trump. Seems like more and more evidence is proving me right on that. So just pointing that out, there seemed to be an effort by the Obama administration to delegitimize Trump once he got into the White House. So I want to put that issue aside now because there's something else going on in our country right now that's kind of concerning me. Another thing that is a lot of talk, but no one's really addressing it the way I want to, and that is the stock market. Snapchat. Do you have a Snapchat, Tom Benson?
No.
I don't either.
That's more of a younger demo thing.
Yeah. And, I had some of my friends who were on it. They say I should get on it. But from everything I saw, most of what I would want to do on it, I could do on other outlets. There's way too much competition. Originally, it started as you take a picture and it doesn't save it. So you send these snap pictures, for instance, to people, and it's kind of a funny thing. But they grew a bunch of users. They were able to increase their revenue quite a bit in their year before they became public.
But they disappear, right, after a while?
Yeah. There's a bunch of other things to it now that they added to it. and they're trying to monetize it, and they were pretty successful at increasing their revenue, but they seem to be hitting sort of a wall in terms of increasing their user growth, which they will have to do. But the reason why I'm bringing up Snapchat is they went public yesterday. Okay, people weren't sure how they would do. Well, their IPO exploded. They're almost at a $40 billion market capitalization or valuation. $40 billion. Now, their revenue is pretty high. They can get up to, they pretty much had, $1 billion revenue. But to make it worth the value of $40 billion in their whole market capitalization, they would have to increase their revenue by like 4 times to make it worth that IPO. They would have to go up to like $4 billion a year revenue. And there's that's like quadruple what they're doing now, what they think they'll do in the next year. They could be very successful. But in terms of their value, and I was watching CNBC earlier, and I was listening to all this, and these pundits didn't understand why Snapchat was so valued so high. Part of the reason is Facebook has been doing really well, but you have to remember Twitter is not doing as well. Twitter has not been able to make as much money, but when Twitter went public, their IPO soared as well. So I'm looking at the stock market as a whole, and I'm looking at this as a whole. And to be frank, I don't understand what's fueling the stock market rise. I really don't understand. I think the stock market is starting to become incredibly overvalued. And when I look into more details in this, and I look at what's going on in the stock market, and look at the companies that are doing well. MarketWatch had a story on this about some of the really stocks that are doing well. The stocks that are doing well are the financial sector and the pharmaceutical sector and the consumer spending sector. So like QVC is doing well, but you have pharmaceutical companies that are doing well, and you have some of the financial companies that are doing well. What does this tell you? This tells you that the Trump administration, this really is kind of a Trump bump. It really is. The Trump administration has come out and they have certain policies that they believe, people in the stock market believe, will help the financial sector, will help consumer spending, and will help the healthcare industry. Here's the problem with all of this. This is all based on hope, basically.
Consumer confidence as of right now.
Consumer confidence in terms of that in the retail market, but it's all based on, in the stock market, on traders hoping for the future now that Trump has got in and Republicans are in.
To use a Democratic song, if I may, happy days are here again.
Well, yes, but I'm not as happy. I'm actually pretty concerned because I'm not sure. There's still a long way to go until the Republicans can accomplish all these things. And it's not going to be as easy. So the Republicans have to start passing legislation in terms of tax reform, have to start passing legislation to repeal and replace Obamacare and actually have free market solutions, and now one thing the Trump administration has done is they've repealed some regulations, but they're not going to be able to repeal Dodd-Frank without the help of Congress. So there's a couple things. Congress needs to act. If they don't act on these things, you will see the stock market start to tumble. But not only that, if this is all based on hope, what happens when they actually do act on all these things? Is the stock market going to keep going up, or is the stock market already overvalued and it will have to go down in terms of a correction? I don't know. I look at what's going on in the stock market. I become very concerned because I become concerned of a bubble. Well, always worried about these bubbles. There's talk now that we might be in another tech bubble. We had a tech bubble burst in 2000. They think the Snapchat thing and other things are evidence that we might be in a tech bubble. But everything I'm seeing is we're investing in the stock market based on the idea that some of this stuff might happen, based on not real data, but on hope for the future. That can be a very dangerous thing. And once this starts building and there's no, underlying thing that's keeping all this together, the stock market could tumble again and could really hurt the economy. This is something that the Trump administration and the Republicans in Congress really need to be worried about. Now, I'm not I'm not a big-time stock trader or financial analyst or anything. I might be just a casual observer, but from what I'm looking at, I'm very concerned now that we've created some kind of bubble here. So we're talking about the Trump boom, but hopefully it's not a Trump bubble. What needs to happen is we need to start having real evidence in certain sectors of the economy that those sectors of the economy are starting to grow. I'm seeing very little evidence that that's happening. Growth is starting to happen a little bit. Consumer confidence is going up, but you can't base a whole economy on that. You have to have real things and real growth. And I'm not sure this can happen, especially when you talk about tax reform and the Republicans now want to add a border adjustment tax. So it's a tax that could totally affect our markets in a negative way if you're talking about trade. So it'll help it in some ways, but it'll balance out with a value-added tax or a border adjustment tax. And I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, but something's not right here with this whole, I think the stock market might be overvalued and the economy might be overvalued, and I'm worried about a crash. I don't know if anyone else agrees or disagrees with me. 407-916-5400. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Subscribe to the Beyond Reason podcast today on your Stitcher app and hear the voice of reason anytime. The voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason is back now.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. In the last segment, I was talking about the stock market and the economy and how the stock market keeps booming and booming. And a lot of analysts say it is because it's a Trump bump is what it is. But when I look at Snapchat, for instance, and I look at they're way overvalued, I think. There are other things that are overvalued. It's all based on hope for the future, and which can be okay, but hopefully the Republicans in Congress and Trump can actually accomplish the things they're hoping for. But I just worry that there's going to be a correction, which happens in the stock market. But how much of a correction are we talking about here? And then we're talking about Janet Yellen of the Federal Reserve is already talking about raising interest rates on this and very soon. So that could have an effect as well. Let's take a call here on this. Dave in Oviedo. Dave, what's your take on this?
Yeah, Michael, you've got the right take on it. Those who don't look at history will be doomed to repeat it. We're, for the most part, the people who are fueling this bubble, and you are correct in saying that it's a bubble.
You think, because, I'm really just a casual observer, but I've been kind of paying attention to it lately because it's just kind of, I don't know, there's just something, a gut feeling, I guess, that something's not right here.
Well, that's the old adage that you go with your gut feeling because your gut knows what your brain hasn't figured out yet.
Yeah, okay.
And although it's complex and it hasn't figured it out, this is a familiar refrain of hopey changey from 8 years ago.
Right.
So it's just a repeat of previous things. The only difference is instead of having $11 trillion in debt with no end in sight and no plan to rein in the entitlement spending, now we're at $20 trillion in debt with no plan for entitlement spending.
That really worries me too.
Yeah, because that's our children and grandchildren. Let's face it, the thing that could that has in history brought great civilizations to their knees is debt. And 9/11 didn't bring us to our knees. Even a nuclear attack wouldn't bring us to our knees. But debt.
And you talk about debt, and you're talking about the government debt and the national debt, obviously. But I feel like a lot of the stock market going up is just based on debt. I mean, you think there's anything to that? Because I don't know what's funding all this.
Well, there's been a lot of money on the sidelines, both here and internationally, just waiting. And although the stock market's going up, and that, of course, we're talking about the Dow and the 500, both of those. But there's still a lot of money on the sidelines. So I think that this is something that this bubble has some legs to go before it goes pop. And there will be all the gnashing of teeth and sobbing whenever it pops. But I do remember back in, as you said, the tech bubble, whenever I had young people come to my office who were wearing wonderfully looking, elegant suits and saying the stock market would never go down again in 1999. They told me that. So, yeah, they didn't experience the fact that fundamentally the stock market's going to go up and it's going to go down. And that's just all there is.
But I just wonder how much it's going to go down. I guess that's what kind of worries me. When you create a bubble, sometimes it bursts pretty hard.
Yeah, I don't think that this bubble is probably going to burst that badly just because we have in recent memory enough people who at least remember 2008 through 2010 enough to have it pop early as opposed to those who just obliviously let it expand. And it is going to pop, and I just don't think it wouldn't surprise me to see a 7 to 10% correction, but I don't think we're going to see anything beyond that 10% mark because there's going to be enough people who are going to realize, I guess, there's money to be made to jump in at that point.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you so much, Dave. I appreciate it. Good. I had some backing on that. It was just something that was kind of catching my attention lately, and I'm thinking, something's not right here. All right. I appreciate you all joining me on this edition of Beyond Reason Radio. It was a pretty fast show. If you missed any of the show, make sure to catch the podcast of the show anywhere podcasts are available. I'm never sure what time I'm going to be on this station. So what you have to do, actually, is send me a friend request on Facebook. Search Michael Yaffee, Yaffae. Send me a friend request or follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. I'm always posting great stuff that causes great debate by everyone, and people just love to pick apart everything I say and disagree with me. And it's really actually a lot of fun. I appreciate you joining me. This is Beyond Reason Radio. And, I'll catch you guys next week.